Hi, I'm Cindy Gay, and welcome to my studio this morning. It is a cold, snowy, let me see if I can get you a view. It's probably all white. We really can't see it out that window, but it is snowing today, and it's blowing, but it's not violent, intense, but it is, we're definitely getting snow. So, let me get the set up a little bit better so you can see what I'm hooking on. Today I'm going to be working on hit and miss. Let's see if this makes a difference. Yeah, I'm definitely going to need to rig up a stand or something for that. That's not doing me any good whatsoever. Okay. Let's get started. These online hook-ins are sort of a practice for me for the video. It gives me a chance to kind of see what's going on. Sorry for the rocking. My glasses. And they're not widely advertised yet. Only a few people know about it. So if you stumbled on it, welcome. And you can come back. We'll do this most days. Not every single day, but most days. I do want to see, bear with me for a minute while I try to go over and grab, what did I look for? I want to grab the chat box. Camp.com live. And on that chat box, there is, if you're on a desktop, there is in the right-hand corner a little icon there that is a pop-out. And what's nice about that is it will pop out and stay on the screen for you so that you can see it. I won't be checking it constantly, but if there's something you want to say, feel free to put something in the comments and I'll check it from time to time. But for now, today, ignore my head while I reach in front of you. I put that on the wrong side. I'm going to be hooking hit and miss. And hit and miss is one of those things that can be confusing for people. Because you hear things like, just put them all in a bag and then pull it out. Other people will say, oh, no, it's much more complicated than that. I think it's somewhere in between. Okay, so I have a pile of just generic scraps from my leftover bin. And I will be grabbing weird little pieces. Let me grab something a little bit longer, hopefully. And what I like to do, and you can see here what I started the other day, is I will start several different sections of hit and miss rather than starting here and working my way over. The problem with that is you've got one decision. And whenever you have just one decision, it can be difficult. This gives you a chance. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 places. Plus 10, I can put it wherever I want. So when I pick up a strip, it doesn't have to go here. It can go anywhere that it makes sense. And I really like it next to this blue. So I'm going to go ahead and just hook this up with the blue. Now, if you want to join me live, there should be a little box at the bottom. You'll have to have a Google sign-on, and you'll have to allow your the Hangout to use your microphone and your camera and all that good stuff. But you can be here on the broadcast live with me, and we can actually talk back and forth. So that makes it very handy. So hooking hit and miss. And my hand is right in the way. Tomorrow I'll try once again a different camera angle. I'm still experimenting with camera angles, so that'll take a while for me to get that figured out. Okay, this one, I don't always go all the way from the beginning to the very end, meaning doing a full row. This particular time I could, so it worked out great. I had a reserve. I had another piece, slightly different cut, but I could have finished it with that. Okay, and I used the whole piece, so it worked out good. So here's a green one. I like that green right here because this little bit looks like it needs a little bit of brightness. So I'm going to put that green here. Now this one started short. It goes from here to here. So it doesn't go the entire length. But what I'll do with this strip is I will start down here at the bottom. And by the way, if you haven't figured it out already, my favorite direction of hooking is from the bottom up, which is a little bit like being left-handed as far as numbers go. Most people prefer top down. I don't make any effort to see where the loop is attached to the bottom. So it doesn't bother me that it gets out of my point of view and I can't see it. I just put the hook in where I think distance-wise it makes sense. And particularly on this hit and miss, I am not following the ditch at all. In fact, I'm in some cases making it crooked on purpose. And I think with this green one, I think what I'll do is when I get up here to the end of the black, instead of turning in towards it, I think I'm just going to kind of go a little bit renegade on it and kind of go out here to the side. And that'll make that part really crooked. Now, this is about as crooked as I usually go. You can make it so wiggly wobbly that it becomes distracting, and then that becomes the focal point instead of your rug. This is really just a supporting background piece. Here's a brown, cuts a little thin, but it'll work. I think I like it there best. So I'm gonna go up here with the red. What I like about hit and miss is that you're basically hooking straight lines, which is the easiest to hook. You're hooking with the grain. I'm not hooking on a diagonal or doing anything crazy. So that makes it easy to hook. And I'm hooking in my favorite direction. So it's just a pleasant thing, and I get to change colors, you know, pretty quickly, which also makes it pretty simple. It's about 10 o'clock, so this is when I'm advertised to start. I usually start a little bit early, just because it takes me a while to work out the kinks, and if I'm ready to go, I just go. So here's a blue. I don't need blue there. So what'll happen is every day at 10 o'clock or slightly before, I will be hooking live. You can see and just watch the video on rugcamp.com/live. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to sign in. You don't have to do anything. If you want to chat, you will have to tell the software to use a sign-in, and it could be one you're already signed into, such as Google or YouTube or Facebook or any of those simple common logins. And then once you do that, then you can make comments in the little chat box in the sidebar. If you're on a mobile, I know sometimes that chat can be a little bit difficult to see. And if you're watching this as a recording, you're not going to see the chat at all. So the chat's really there just in case someone wants to do a shout out and ask a question or make a comment, which I hope you'll do. I hope you're hooking along with me, because otherwise this is a bit like watching paint dry. What else can I tell you about hit and miss? Sometimes it can be a little daunting on what color to use next. If you're in a spot where you just can't seem to find a color that makes you happy about what needs to go next. A great tip that I got from Barbara Carroll years ago, and I wasn't even hooking hit and miss, somebody else in the class was, and that was to use a complement or a neutral. I can't even talk and look for wool at the same time. Trying to find something that's will finish that row up, because I really don't want it to end, because I've got another one that ends right there, so I would really like to continue with that. However, that is a color I don't use very often, so I'm having trouble finding something. Not this bright one. I guess that's probably the closest match I've got, so I'm going to use that to finish it up. What I was saying is, when you're stuck on something to do, Barbara Carroll recommended going with a complement or a neutral. And I did find that I do like hit and miss with a lot of neutrals in it. I hooked one rug called Allie's Cat. You can see that on the gallery on my website. And that is hooked only with the colors I used in the rug, which were a lot of them, but no neutrals. So it has a completely different look than when you are actually using the neutrals with it. When you're hooking the hit and miss as an edge on a rug or an edge of a footstool, I use it a lot in my footstool designs simply because it hides the side seam and does a really good job of that. But on those, I recommend using not only what you have used in the center of rug, but use everything else also. Grab that scrap bag and make it a true hit and miss. Get purples and oranges and all different colors that you're not using, and don't do a whole lot of editing. I'll hook in some whatever comes up or whatever fits my fancy, and it could be bright or loud, obnoxious, and I'll hook it in when the rug is completely done. If I decide that it's not quite right, then I'll change it. But otherwise, I leave it in, even though it might be a glaring standout. That could end up being the one feature of the rug that makes it really sparkle. So you want to be careful about editing and judging too soon. Okay. Here's a big old fat one sitting on top, so I think I'll use that, talk about light ones. And then I need to find a place, to use it. I actually kind of like it against that yellow. I'm going to use it there. One thing you'll notice is that when you put certain colors next to other colors, they change. So this bright peach next to this dull gold is going to live a little bit more comfortably here than if I put it, up against this. Let me grab the other end of it. Unless I put it there. See how much it stands out more? And that's because of what it's surrounded by. You see that? I think you can kind of see that. Where over here, it blends in with that gold so much more easily, and it just sort of lives happily where it needs to be. Now, it's a bright color. It would be one that I would probably not use normally, but this is hit and miss. So you use everything. And as I said, when the rug is all done, if I decide this piece is too bright, I've earned the right to make that decision. Until it's done, I don't have the right to pull it back out. One thing I learned about hit and miss, which I thought was a really good lesson, it's in my rug called the Antique Rose Runner, which I'll put a link to at the bottom of this video. The Antique Rose Runner is one of my favorites. It's the first rug I hooked where I allowed myself to be crooked. And Karen Cayley was teaching the class. I was quite proud of myself because I was actually hooking the rug even more crooked than what it was drawn. So I felt like I was making progress there. One thing that she mentioned about the hit and miss, which took me a little while to get comfortable with, but I'm glad I did it, is look at your center motif. What's the most important color? And now don't use that color in the hit and miss. Now that was hard for me because the main color of that rug was red, and I do like red. So I did put red in the hit and miss, but I didn't do nearly as much as I would have normally. And it's true. It does make the red in the center of the rug more special because it really doesn't appear anywhere else. So it flies in the face of take everything that you use in the center of the rug and move it to the border. I mean, that's a good guideline if you don't know what else to do. But there are other ways. You can bring in new stuff in the border. We live by a lot of rules in rug hooking that I think could bear breaking. Okay, where do I want to go next? Let's grab a neutral just because I haven't hooked a neutral in a while, and I probably need it in some of these rows. Like this one right here really needs a neutral. So I'm just going to bring that in. Actually, it's too close in color to this neutral. So I'm going to put that somewhere else. Let's put that over here. And then I'll grab either a darker neutral or lighter neutral rather than a medium. And we'll pop that in on the side of the other one over there. Typically when I'm hooking, I like to listen to books on tape or more recently podcasts. I really like the idea of a podcast because it downloads, when you subscribe, it downloads automatically and it's there when you're ready to play it. And when you play it, you can set up your system so that it deletes it. So I listen to a lot of podcasts, particularly in the car. And when I'm doing something like this that doesn't require a whole lot of attention. Now you may have noticed by now that I don't cut my ends. I leave them kind of hanging up here. So what I'll do is when I get to a certain point, I'll come back and I will cut my ends. Now I always cut one at a time. Even if two of them are sitting in that same hole, I will cut one at a time. I tug on it a little bit. I'm going to leave that one there because it's kind of hanging out here a little bit. I generally don't cut them unless they are completely surrounded, meaning all the hooking all the way around them is done. Okay. Here's a light neutral. See, that looks much better there. It doesn't reflect that color quite as much. So we'll pop that color up in here. So quiet today. The wind must have stopped. Even the wind chimes aren't making noise today. Okay, that one didn't quite make it all the way to the top, and I'm just going to leave that like that. One thing I try to avoid is because a lot of times your wool is all the same length, try to avoid everything ending at the same place. This one's ending the same place that one is, but it's so close to the top that I think it'll disappear. What I could have done is maybe rip out a couple and end it here, so it's not at the same height as that one. You just want to control it in such a way that you are wonderfully irregular with it. Now this one has sort of a strange situation. I don't know if you can see, yeah, you can kind of see it, where it gets a little bit bigger. Oh, you can't see that. You can see the other one. It gets a little bit bigger and then it gets skinny. What, get up here so I can hook easier. Couple things that I could do there. If this was a normal hooking and I've got sort of a fat area and then I go down to a skinny area, rather than hooking one row straight down and then having this weird little space over here to fill it in, I'll do a loop and then maybe do a loop sideways and then maybe another sideways loop or whatever until I can get to the point where I come down out of that area. But this is hit and miss. So I've got a design decision to make in that, do I want to fill that area in, or do I want to bring in a new color? I think it's too small to bring another color in, and it's too short. It's not going to last for very long. So I am literally going to turn my loop sideways here and do 2 loops, and then do 1 loop that way and 1 loop this way. If you notice, I'm turning my hook in different directions and it's making the loops face in different directions. And that filled that space in quite nicely, even though the cut is smallish and really wasn't big enough to fill that area on its own. Now that area is nicely filled in and I don't have to go back and fuss with it. So I'm going to take this right all the way up. My loops are not perfect. When I pull up a loop, sometimes it's twisted. These smaller cut size, these look like 6s or 7s. 7's my favorite cut, so I usually have more 7s cut than anything else. Although lately all the cut sizes I'm using are quite large. And a 7 comes up without too much twisting. The wider the cut, actually the more technique you need. Like here's a really wide one. Let's use that. And I'm looking at what I've got done so far around here. I'm actually going to start this one short, because if I hook until I end, I'm going to have a lot more stopping and starting at the top. So I want one that starts a little bit short of the bottom. So I'm putting a loop in sideways. This first loop, notice the position of my hook. That loop is coming up sideways. Then I'll go back to the standard position and start hooking and bringing that big, beautiful fat loop up. Now I'm not hooking in the most comfortable position because I'm not directly in front of it. I'm kind of like sideways a little bit. mainly because of the camera view. I need to work on the camera view so that you can look right over my shoulder. And then I won't have to contort. And I think tomorrow I'll put you on the other side so that you can see that a little bit better. Okay. So now, there's a bright orange. I think I'll put that in next. And then I'm just going to kind of come up and go around. And because I started that last one with one loop sideways and the tail sideways, the first loop sideways, and then the rest regular, it makes a nice pointed little spot that fills in really nice. Okay, I have a chunk of this left, so I can actually bring this somewhere else. I want to take it, it's an intense color, so I want to bring it quite a bit far over here. I would rather finish hooking a piece when I cut it off rather than taking it and putting it down in my scrap. I'll do that in particular when I hook background. When I end a piece, I don't lay it down. I go and look for another spot to start hooking background. There's usually enough room, some other area on my frame where I can start hooking that background. I'll do the same thing with motifs. If I'm hooking, for instance, a bunch of leaves and I'm hooking them with multiple wools, you know, when I get to an area or I've decided I've used enough of that green on that particular leaf, rather than finishing up that one leaf, I'll finish the strip. And so I will just hook it in another leaf somewhere and then go back when I'm ready to grab a new strip, go back to my original piece. Okay. What do we have? Get some of these thready little neutrals. They're not the best to hook with, but once they're in, they tend to behave. So I'm going to hook that one right here alongside this little partial green strip. There's not much body to this wool either. It looks like it was cut off a piece that probably wasn't felted all the way. It might have been one of those where I had a piece that was unwashed and I needed a bit of that color right away, couldn't wait for it to be washed. And this could be the rest of the strip. Okay. Trim off a couple of these. Dark green. I don't want to use it here because I've got green there already. I could put it there. That's too much dark on dark. I'm going to avoid that. I'm not crazy about that. Not crazy about that. And that's a little too harsh. So I think I'm going back to this area, which I will eventually start to incorporate this little half strip of blue that was hooked there. It looks like that's the tail end of this little piece right here. And this piece is a much smaller cut, probably a 4. There's not much to it. And it's a thin wool, which I'd much rather hook with a thick wool than a thin one. You know, some people prefer it the other way around. And luckily, it's all about personal taste. I mean, what good would it be if we all like the same wool? What time is it? It's 10:24 according to my computer clock. I'm going to do this until about 10:30, but I want to give you sort of a preview on what's coming up for tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going to do something a little bit different in that I need to draw up a pattern for a friend of mine. And it's a simple circle pattern, nothing terribly complicated. But I thought I would draw that live so that you could see it. And then that way I would for sure get it done, which is important. I don't need it until a week from Thursday, but if I get it done sooner, hey, that's better. Oh, here's a pretty one. That must have been a strip someone gave to me. I don't remember ever hooking with this wool. This is gorgeous. Kind of like it here next to that lighter gold area, which means we'll be within a strip of connecting at least the bottom part of this hit and miss, which is the fun part. You know, when you get to the point and it starts to fill in and you can call it complete. When you're hooking it from one end to the other in a solid mass, I think it's much more difficult because you've got to make decisions one at a time instead of having the option to put that piece of wool in a lot of different places. And you're robbed of this, wow, I got it done feeling, which I thrive on that feeling. So I do a lot of hooking all over the place, and then it becomes solid rather than hooking it solid from one end to the other. There's a lot of advantages to doing it that way too. If you start to run out of wool, you can bring in other wools, particularly with backgrounds. So there's some advantages to doing it that way. Okay, now what is going to connect those two pieces for me? I want something probably a little bit light. Maybe this gold, although it tends to reflect. That's not gold, that's a green. But look how closely those are reflecting each other. Here's an orangey color. That would be good, but I gotta find more of it. Here's a long orange. What about that one? I can live with that one. Let's do that one. And it looks like it's long enough to go all the way through. Got just a little bit of space here to hook in between. And luckily this is a smaller cut. So it's all working out pretty good. And then once I get up here, I'll have to decide which way I'm going to go. Am I going to follow the black line, or am I going to follow that red-orange that's right next to it? And I think I'm going to follow the black. So that means I'll pretty much go straight up. And then I'll have to find something that will fill up the space in between the two. And what could that be? What I'm doing is, as I'm hooking, I'm kind of looking at the surrounding area, trying to decide what kind of color that would be. The simplest is going to be to make it a neutral. And that might be exactly what I end up doing, particularly if I can find a light one. Okay, light, neutral. How about one of these? That's too light. Looks like the same one as that one. Need sort of like a khaki. Here's one with a bunch of different colors, kind of nondescript, a little too close to that red one. So what if we go with green? I like that one. Let's go there. Close enough. And this part down here is all filled in, so I'm going to start right here in that little V. I'll pull the loop up so that, or the strip up, so that the tail is pointing upside down. And I'll pull the first loop up. Notice where my hook is. It's down here at the bottom. And then moving the hook out to the side, hooking it up in the normal method. And then this tends to get a little bit tight up here. In fact, it's pretty much at the very top, it's already closed. So what I'll do is I'll hook a couple more sideways, the normal way, and then I'll hook a couple here that are the wrong way. It's called tunneling when you have a bunch of them together like that. Okay. Now we need to cut. Yay! I think that's why I spend a lot of time not cutting my wool, simply because then when it's all hooked together, then I can cut it and it's like a big reveal. And now I just need a piece to go right in through here. Yeah, it's too green. So it's too dark. Bright orange. Here's a good one. I'm just gonna grab the end of that and then work my way up. Now this one has a little bit of the same situation. So far, the cut is filling it, although it doesn't quite fill it right here in this little spot up in here. So I'll take one, turn it sideways, and get it kind of nestled in there so that the two together sort of fill that up. And then that doesn't quite fill, so I'll put another one sideways next to it. And then we'll do the tail. And here we go. We got a good chunk of it done. So tomorrow what I'll probably do is move the rug over a little bit so I can kind of back up and finish up this area. And then I'll get that area done. And then I'll come over here and set up a big chunk of it so that I can go in and set up my starting rows and get that settled. So it is 10:32, so I'm going to sign off. Remember that you can join me every day at 10 o'clock. I'm usually there a little bit early, not always, but most days I'm there a little bit early. You can join me on rugcamp.com/live. There's not much on that website right now. It is in the process of being filled up with some video lessons and that type of thing. And this process here is actually a testing ground to kind of work out some of the technical issues while still giving you something. So thanks for being here, and I'll see you next time on rugcamp.com. Thanks.